Hi, welcome. Karis to you. It's 6 p.m., Thursday, the 24th of June, 2026. And are you ready to take notes? I might say something noteworthy. I do have a scripture in mind at the moment, and it's because I was in a discussion with a friend about Matthew 5, for example, where Christ is talking about loving the Lord your God and loving your neighbor as yourself. Um, in fact, that's not the right one because Matthew 5 is about loving your enemies. So let's just look for Samaritan. Oh, it's not even in Matthew. That's why. Not the Good Samaritan in any way. It's Luke 10:33 that I've come across there. Right. So a little bit before that. Okay. So even though I know it's in Matthew as well, I'll use the Luke 10:27 because it was easier to find. He answered, excuse me. Ah, I'm a little bit fluey. I haven't had any flu or any kind of illness in at least 15 years. And as you can hear right now, just a little bit fluey. Um, Now, let's read that. Luke 7:27. Luke 10:27, sorry. He answered, you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and you must love your neighbor as yourself. Okay, so the discussion I was having with this person was that we need to love God and also love our neighbor, and even love our neighbor above ourselves. And they said, no, uh, the scripture says you must love your neighbor as yourself, which means you can't neglect loving yourself. However, I didn't have an answer for them at the time. And only a few minutes before starting this message, I came across it in Philippians 2, verse 3. And I'm in the International Standard Version at the moment. Philippians 2:3. Do not act out of selfish ambition or conceit, but with humility think of others as being better than yourselves. Okay, now I'm going to have a quick look at the literal version there. In fact, I'm going to go to Strong's. Okay, in King James, it says, let nothing be done through strife or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem other better than themselves. The interesting thing there is the word translated into vainglory. Strong's gives it as Kenodoxia. I can't really pronounce that very well. I'm not the greatest Greek speaker. Kenodoxia from G2755. I'm not going to go look up that. And it means emptying glory, empty glorying. That is self conceit or vainglory. Now, the literal version has called that self glory. And strife, there is in this is probably going to be a rather weak message because again, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm just looking up words as I go. Uh, but the word for strife is related to intrigue and faction and contention, right? So it is my group's better than your group. I support the Newcastle Knights and you support the Manly Sea Eagles. Well, Aussies know what I'm talking about there. Um, I support the Chicago Bears and you support the whatever the other teams are in the US. I support the Arsenal Gunners and soccer and you support Manly United or whatever the British soccer teams are over there. That is what the literal word translated into strife means to be contentious on an intrigue, but a faction level. My group against your group. And it doesn't necessarily mean physical fighting because that'd be a different word. I know Greek is so specific in its words that a word of physical fighting would be implied, there'd be the physicality implied in it. Yet I found the literal translation quite interesting. Do nothing according to party spirit or self-glory. So, party spirit, now they're saying party as in the Liberal Party versus Labour Party in Australia, or the Republicans versus Democrats in the US, or the Tories versus the whatever the other party is in the UK. Um, Labour and Tories, I think it is. Anyway, they're talking about that kind of party spirit. But it reminds me of other verses that say, do nothing in revelry, which is a partying, woohoo type spirit. It's the New Year's Eve revelries and the like. And reveling doesn't necessarily mean getting drunk. It means excessive partying, but not a political party, the event of a party, like a birthday party type thing. So, anyway, it just reminded me of that. But the whole point here is esteeming one another as surpassing themselves. I've still got the literal version in front of me there. So, we are to have others above ourselves. So, when we think of love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your mind and all your soul and all your strength. I think I've got them all there. And your neighbor as yourself. Philippians 2:3 then indicates above yourself. The literal standard version. Do nothing in rivalry or vainglory, but in humility of mind, counting one another more excellent than yourselves. Lift people above yourself. They're not as good as me. They're better than me. Now, sure, I might happen to know some things that other people don't know, but that doesn't make me better. That just makes me more responsible in some ways. Am I living up to the responsibility I hold? Well, if they're definitely living up to the responsibility they hold, just because I have more responsibility means I have to live at a higher level. It doesn't mean I'm better, just means that I need to attain what is required for that responsibility. I'm not better. I'm just a different level of responsibility. Is it a higher level of responsibility? Well, in a sense, it is because I am responsible for more. But does that make me better? No, if anything, it makes me lower. Because if you wish to lead, you need to be the servant of all. That I can find in Matthew, but I'd have to spend time to go look, etc., as I did before. So, where do you place yourself? Now, my friend is right. The scripture does say to love your neighbor as yourself. And I didn't think of this scripture at the time. I had a feeling that the Bible said something about loving them above yourself. In fact, I'd uh, written a note to work on for another project, and I'd written that if Christ could have said, love your neighbor beyond yourself, or above yourself, or before yourself, he would have. But he was quoting the law, the Mosaic law out of the Old Testament, because those words are in the Old Testament. It was easier to find in Luke because I don't recall where it is in the Old Testament, and it would have been harder to find. But it was just a matter of, oh, yes, Good Samaritan. I know it's in the same chapter as that. Uh, though it is in the Old Testament. Actually, there's one way to find that. And it's a relatively quick and easy way to find that. I just have to go back to Luke, and it was Luke 10, wasn't it? Luke 10:27. And I go to the parallel Bible, which gives me four Bibles at once. I can have more in that if I choose. But okay, right. In the literal version, it gives me the cross references. Deuteronomy 6:5 and Leviticus 9:18. I know the Leviticus 9:18 is the one that talks about loving your neighbor as yourself. So Deuteronomy 6:5 would be love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your mind and all your uh, strength. So let's go there. Um, Deuteronomy 6:5, just to show you where Jesus was coming from at the time. And I'll stay in the literal translation. And you shall love Jehovah as your and you shall love Jehovah your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. And Leviticus 19, 18, 19. because I quote 1919 on occasion. So in looking for it, I've read this before. 1918, you shall not take vengeance nor bear any grudge against your sons of your people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am Jehovah. So they are two different books and two different scriptures in the Old Testament, in the law, but those are the scriptures that both Christ quoted in Matthew when he was questioned by either the Pharisees or I think it was the Pharisees rather than the Sadducees or the like. But certainly when the young lawyer he was discussing this same matter with, he said exactly the same thing, that the two most important laws are to love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your strength. And the second is to love your neighbor as yourself. Yet still, my point being, we then forget, with the emphasis on that, it's mentioned not only in the Old Testament, because that's where it comes from, I just read you those, it's mentioned when Jesus was questioned and he said, love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And the young lawyer in Luke said the same. So we have three references of it in the Bible. It's reinforcing itself. Yet, again, Paul can't be written off when he says in Philippians, wasn't it? Philippians 2, 3. And let's look at the literal version again. Doing nothing according to party spirit or self-glory, but in humility, esteeming one another as surpassing themselves or yourselves. Really, do we do that? Do we treat others as superior to ourselves? Not necessarily, oh, they're more intelligent than me or they're a better person than me. But think of them as a higher rank than you. To esteem them above you doesn't mean you have no love for yourself. You've still got to love yourself, but treat them like you're in the army and you're a corporal and they're a captain. They outrank you. You are to give them honor, respect, and if you can, without going against God, sure, do what they say. But God is the general, and his orders, what he says to do as a Christian, to um, be a good, godly person, outranks anything a lieutenant might say to you. So if the lieutenant says, right, come to the pub with me and we'll get drunk, then you say, sorry, God, the general who outranks you, said, no, don't do that. Don't be an alcoholic. Don't have any boisterous revelry. So we are to respect them as if they outrank us. We are to esteem them or consider them higher than us. But that doesn't mean we don't have love for ourselves. I've said that, I'm repeating myself, and I wonder why I'm doing this. I wonder why I'm on it. I wonder why I even found this a short while ago before it was time to start delivering a message. Is there somebody out there that needs to hear A, one, you do need to love yourself. B, don't love your neighbor, and your neighbor is not necessarily uh, the person that lives either side of you. After all, the story of the Good Samaritan came when the young lawyer said to Christ, "Who is my neighbor?" And Christ thought for a while and said, and gave the parable of the uh, Good Samaritan, saying that there was a person that was mugged, attacked, and by thieves and left lying on the side of the road. And a priest walked past and did nothing, and a Levite walked past and did nothing. And then a Samaritan came along and picked him up, took him to a motel type thing, an inn or the like, and um, said, "Take care of him. Here's some money. And if it costs more than that, when I come back, I'll pay you." And Christ then said, "Who was this person's neighbor?" And the lawyer said, "The one who took care of him." And Christ said, "Yep, absolutely, you're right." So your neighbor might not be someone from your tribe, from your suburb, but anyone you come in contact with is how he defines neighbor. Treat everyone you come in contact with as superior to yourself, not more intelligent, not more um, spiritual or does good things for God or whatever. Just treat them as if they're a higher rank than you. Who needs this message? I don't know. I'm guessing that I'm on this message because somebody needs it, because it's not flowing as if it's natural for me. It's not something that I need to talk about right now. It's or am comfortable with talking about right now. I'm not uncomfortable with it. I just don't know what I'm saying. I never know what I'm saying, but I normally can just pick a direction and head there. Though I'm just stuck on this for a moment, and I'm guessing somebody needs to know a little bit more about loving God and loving your neighbor, which is everyone. Okay, look, that'll do. I'll wrap up there. Bless you, govern well. Charis to you.